Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. I want to take this time, which I don't do often enough, to say thank you for the viewership. Thank you for the subscriptions. Those of you who are subscribed, I appreciate that. I'm not trying to become monetized. I really don't care about that. I'm never going to have commercials on this channel. However, I think that if what I'm saying is true, it's important. And if you feel like there's someone that you know that would be open-minded enough to take what is an extremely fringe view of the Bible and other religious texts and stories, both written and only spoken, some of them involving dance, and could consider it and see if it works in reality, turn them on to my channel. I would really appreciate it. It might actually help them in their understanding of what reality is and what people are. I know it changed me greatly. If you'd have known me in 2011 and before that, and there have been people who've known me that long and longer, you would know that I wasn't a very nice person. Now, that might surprise you, but it's absolutely true. I'm not saying I was cruel to everyone, but as an example, I would go and find people, speaking of people who've known me my whole life, peace and respect. How you doing, B? I would go and try to ruin the religion of people who weren't even of the age of accountability according to the Jews. 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and would argue with their parents and give logical, although typical, argumentation against why there can be no God, why the Bible isn't true. Of course, I used every atheistic trope that is near meaningless to make those arguments. And it wasn't fair of me, and I can't go back and erase that. I would, but I don't have opportunity to meet everyone again that I ever hurt. I just don't have that opportunity right now, so I cannot do that, and I resent that. I regret that deeply, I do. But I spoke to a lot of strangers and tried to ruin their religion. You might even say I'm still trying to ruin religion right now, and you'd be right. In fact, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a superstitious person. You can ask B. Hey, SFB mod, how you doing? I'm not a superstitious or religious person. I'm just not. I never have been. But I think what's being described in the Bible is coherent within itself, is plausible in physics. You can't expect prophecy, things that haven't happened, to have already been realized in physics, but they can happen in physics. And in a time that these stories were written where people couldn't possibly have known physics like we do now, chemistry of our near solar system, things like that, they just couldn't fake it, and they just couldn't write it. And to me, that's the most compelling evidence. And when I say evidence, I mean, yes, it's actual hard evidence that mankind on this earth could not, absolutely could not have authored. Rewrite it, sure. Scribble down what God's saying, absolutely. However, the ideas simply can't be there, and are anyway. And that's how I know mankind did not author the Bible. Moving on, I want to tell you all, you can relax. According to the Bible, not according to Christians, but according to the Bible, it is highly, highly, highly unlikely that you personally have original sin. Okay? Sin means missing the mark. In order to have a mark, you have to have some kind of target, and you have to have some kind of a should. Yes, you can relax, B. But what the text, despite what Christians say, there's actually two kinds of sin, and they can't be conflated together. There's original sin, and then there's like daily sin. Okay. Now, daily sin, that is to say, you separate yourself through your acts, through your thoughts. Totally makes sense. I can separate myself from anyone just by being offensive, being inconsiderate, being rude. Any one of those ways. I could present a lot of ideas that don't make sense in reality, and certain people who are fans of logic will reject me for that, or at least think I'm an idiot, something like that. So it's very easy for me to sin against you. I try very hard not to sin against you. But is that the same thing as committing original sin? In chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, it describes what the original sin was. It has nothing to do with Adam and Eve or the garden, because sin requires that you understand, in the definition of sin through the rest of the through this part of the text, it requires that you understand what you're doing is wrong. I like to talk to Christians about their pride, which is something that's mentioned several times in the Bible. And I present the argument this way. The summation is, if you feel that you are guilty, that's a pride problem. If you're offended by that right now, stop and think about why you're offended by me saying that you're proud. Stop and think about that for just a second. But here's why I say guilt is a pride problem. In order that I'm guilty, I have to understand all all possible information on a given situation. So I think, what's the simplest situation? Well, probably the simplest situation is a singular thing. Well, what's the simplest singular thing? Probably hydrogen. Okay, so let's say hydrogen is the simplest thing. Do I know everything even about just hydrogen, the simplest thing that I know of? Actually, I don't. So do I fully understand hydrogen? Well, no, I can't. I don't know what it's even made of. I mean, we call the molecule hydrogen, or atom. I don't even know if it's an atom or a molecule. Somebody tell me that. But since I don't know everything about it, I can't make perfect decisions based on partial knowledge. That's just a fact of logic. Okay, so the Bible says repeatedly, my ways are not your ways. You don't understand. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And on, and I could just keep quoting it forever. It's an element, thereby an atom. Thanks, SFB mod. So since I can't make perfect decisions based on partial information, I make partially correct decisions based on partial information. This is why we have failures. If you have failures in your life, it's because you were missing information. Okay, but moving on toward guilt. If I'm working with partial information, like a child who doesn't understand what a handgun is, sorry, I'm ex-military and I get a bit graphic about these sorts of things. A 3-year-old can watch a movie of someone picking up a gun like Dad's, pick up the gun, point it with some amount of accuracy, and squeeze off a round. Now, that doesn't mean they understand what the bullet is going to do when it hits its target, when it hits what it's aiming at. And say 3-year-old murders grandpa on purpose. Thought it would be interesting because, you know, in movies, nobody seems to actually get hurt. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happens. It's exciting. But then you might see the same actor in another movie. They didn't get killed by the gunshot. Why would it hurt grandpa? It's just a lot of exciting stuff goes on that they don't understand. So it makes perfect sense with their limited knowledge and understanding of what a handgun is that you can put in jail now. No, it's ridiculous. And why in our legal system you can't take a 3-year-old to trial, try them, find them guilty or reasonably guilty and put them in prison? Well, because they literally don't understand what happened there. No, what we do when a 3-year-old squeezes off a round is we rush them out of the room, get the gun away from them, and try to protect them from what they just did. What if we are that ignorant that we actually understand very little? SFB Mod's a sciencey guy. He'll attest to you that of the knowable universe, we know very, very little. And that's just the situation where we're ignorant. Okay, so it's easy for me to justify ignorance in people, which is obvious and stated in the text, and grace of God. Well, like the 3-year-old in court, the judge would dismiss the case and give the 3-year-old grace. Why? Well, because they're an ignorant 3-year-old. That's why. So it makes perfect sense that you would extend grace to the ignorant. Of course. So it's easy for me to justify grace in the face of ignorance. Let's move on. Is that justice? Well, yes, actually, it's perfect justice. Person didn't really understand everything about it. They did things, they didn't understand what all the repercussions would be. They didn't have all necessary information to make a perfect decision, and then they made a mistake. They did something bad, poorly, something like that. So it's easy to justify ignorance, grace, and justice. Perfect. Perfect. We're on a roll. Let's go ahead and throw Christian guilt in there on top of it. Oh, wait a minute. Guilt in the face of ignorance. Can I justify guilt of the ignorance? If someone's ignorant of something, can I justify them being guilty? Oh, wow. See, you can't. So what we're doing is like the adult who was abused as a child, acting out on themselves, punishing themselves for something out of their control. And we're doing it every day of our lives. So bearing all that in mind, that whole sphere right there, it is an altered Toyota symbol, actually, but I was born in Taurus. So it works pretty good for the ancient sign for Taurus. Bearing all of that in mind, let's go to what sin means. Okay, you can separate yourself from God or from other people by missing the mark, not doing what they need you to do. Okay, but in order to be an original sin that is unforgivable, which is what a lot of Christians believe, you'd have to be in full knowledge. Chapter 6 of the book of Genesis describes a people in full knowledge. Here we go. I think the title of this should be The Original Sin of the Fallen Angels, and not the formal title of this, The Corruption of Man. Why? Because it's not the corruption of man. And that just annoys me when things are mislabeled. Yes, we're proud of ourselves and we want to think we're guilty. According to the Bible, you can't be, unless, of course, you're a fully ascended angel, which I don't think you are. This is also the beginning of the explanation as why we must be measured for sin. That's a phrase. It's a complete measured for sin. And why the curse on the 3rd or 4th generation of people. Literally, this pops up every 3rd or 4th generation, only in certain families. Most families do not have this. It's actually a little bit on the rare side, but I think after this reading, you're going to learn to easily be able to recognize those that they are talking about when they say mighty men and men of renown. In an extra heavy duty, hyper literal, serious, not pulling your leg, adding as few words as possible translation. It came to pass when mankind began to multiply on the face of this earth, and daughters were also born unto them also, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and that they were fair to look upon, most would agree, and they took them wives, which, each they chose to do. Each of the angels who did this chose to do this. Each of the sons of God chose to do this individually, which is why only 1/3 of them did it. Okay. And what did they choose to do? Well, they didn't choose to pick their wives. And I know a lot of Christian sects look at it that way, but that's kind of silly. Of course you choose your own mate. But the topic here is not the mate. The topic here is the act of the sons of God and what they chose to do, which was to take a mate. So they chose, each one of them themselves, to take a mate. Which mate it was is kind of irrelevant to the story. And because of this, Jehovah required something. Jehovah's Spirit will not always walk alongside man, despite that he also as in similarity to the speaker here, the author here, has flesh. Despite that, his days shall be 120 years. That is, if I translated 120, that is God elected redeemable. 120 years of a God elected redeemable life. You'll notice that God elected and redeemable, these are standards, how to read those numbers. You'll notice that implicitly states that they're not yet redeemed. So to be in a God elected redeemable life is to be chosen to be a human being on an earth to be redeemed. So the number does make sense. And besides that, no one's made it to 130 yet that we know of that's been well confirmed. So it's also true in that way. And there became giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. After the event, it continued. Now, people will argue over the flood narrative and whether or not the flood wiped out all of this kind of being or not. I'm going to contest and give evidence today. It did not. Because the sons of God knew the daughters of mankind, and those bare to them, and the same born were mighty men, and were to be an everlasting secret. That is completely left out of the King James and other versions that I've looked into. That it is intended implicitly, definitionally, to be an everlasting secret. Why those words are missing, I have no idea. To make sons of God into the name. So here's everything that I think about this section right here, 6:4. We are children of God. That's a righteous claim, a claim of right due to a birth line, a bloodline, a birthing. In order to become God, I think is what Lucifer was doing here. I think this is referring to Lucifer and his crew. 1/3 of his crew fell with him. In order to become God, they need to make a new kind so that it's a different bloodline. Because otherwise, you're just making people that belong to our already existent Homo sapiens sapien line. Yet you need to make something different. And so they did. And Jehovah saw the wickedness of mankind is great enough in the earth. The word enough is left out in the King James. And every imagination of the thoughts of his heart were evil continually. And the Comforter from Jehovah, sometimes called Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit, reminded mankind of the covenant. Now, how would we be reminded of the covenant? In a time that we are continuously evil and we're able to do everything of our imagination, as in the Tower of Babel, other than with technology. I see no other way that these things could possibly be accomplished. Of course, the greater we get in science, the more people tend away from superstition. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. It should be that way. But overall, the Bible's talking about the end of superstition anyway. Okay, I'm going to pause here at 6:06 and check the chat and see if you guys have anything that you need addressed or something I could maybe suggest. I don't need addressed sounds so damned demeaning. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. If there's anything I can do to entertain your mind. Sounds like how demons still corrupt mankind then and today. It could be demons. It could be demons. That's still possible within the reading. But you're going to have to maintain that demons means God's fallen angels. In a pure creation, a total creation view of creation, you would have to say God made Satan. You would have to say thereby God made demons. I understand that thought process. But this is never directly claimed that Satan or demons are made by God, although allowed to act on reality. And if you look into the words creation in the creation narrative, it means to reform or repurpose an existing thing, which is why the earth is void at the very beginning. And that void there means void like a wilderness or a ruin, someplace that has no life and no distinctions, no favorable places. Make sons of God into the name. Yes, the name. The name as in the name of conspicuous position. That is the name of God. That is to make themselves God. If that makes sense to you. Not finding this version easily. SFB mod, you'll find this version on this channel and only on this channel. Don't bother to look for it. This is I think, well, first of all, I know for a fact that it's continuous throughout the text in one context and it never argues with itself. I know that for a fact. This I am getting from the Greek lexicon, and I'm leaving out the assumptions of conjunctive words. I'm just leaving them out. And an example where the King James had in one certain verse 15 additional words, I have 11. It's literally closer to the actual most verified. I don't know if you value the Greek lexicon or not, but that's what I'm using for the belief that it's the best available thing. And it seems to be, because it works out. The sons of God were good swimmers. Well, they do play in the water now, don't they? Become gods. Yes. I didn't see your comment above. Thank you, Big Zebra. Been looking Hebrew lexicon for this. Well, these are the words from the Hebrew lexicon. That's what this is. Like, it doesn't say God in the beginning of 6:5. It doesn't. To translate it God is way too general a term and not distinctive and doesn't identify the individual or idea set, whereas Jehovah does. But the original word is more Jehovah than it is God, although you'll read God in the King James. It just doesn't say that. And they left entire ideas and sections out for the King James and other editions. I'm going to go back to, I could talk about that all day long and why I'm doing this. And the Comforter from Jehovah rid mankind of the covenant. For grief within the heart of Jehovah brought to his mind this promise. That is to say, grief for us and our mistakes in ignorance indicates that it's time to fulfill the promise or execute the covenant. And by the way, covenant there actually means dividing covenant. It decides something. It divides between one thing. It differentiates. And Jehovah demanded, I will abolish mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the earth. All mankind, and beasts, and creeping thing, and the fowl of the air. For the Comforter brought to mind what promise was made. That is the Holy Spirit, the communication between God and man, indicated to God the Father that it was time to end this thing, and we had gotten to the point of advancement, corruption, etc., etc. All of the beautiful things, all the horrible things. Sorry, I do that every once in a while. Is there anything else I need to explain right there in my view? In the King James, it appears here in 6:8 and Noah. Noah is a meaningless name. But all of the names throughout all of the stories agree with the story and give depth to the story, as if the naming of the person was changed at the high point of their life, so it fit the story, or that dad and mom had perfect prayer and named the character according to the high point of that character's life, or it's not historical and it's just an addition to the story for clarity, using what translators thought were names. And the giver of rest found grace in the eyes of Jehovah. The giver of rest. Of course, the time of rest is ascension. The giver of rest is him who gives ascension, and is not Jehovah, but is referring to Jehovah. After all, we are doing what Jehovah demands. And we can talk about what Jehovah means, but not right this moment. You're not interrupting, SFB. Everlasting secret is part of, let me go back to that. Hold on a second. Let's see. Everlasting secret. Where was that? Promise. Where was everlasting secret at? Where was that? Everlasting secret. Here we go. Everlasting secret is part of the words, the etymology of the words indicated in it's part of the etymology of the phrase the name. The idea of a secret name. So in the creation of them, it was to be a secret. Those who would make the name, that is the offspring. So yes, everlasting secret here is not directly word for word stated, but it's a necessity of the overall idea. So I included it. I chose to include it. I chose those words. We can debate them anytime you like, of course. Okay, that's a topic change right there. You guys got anything that you want to talk about, discuss, come in? It's almost been a half an hour already. I'm trying to keep these things short. If anyone wants to come in, I would invite you to come in. Anybody up for that? I could find you, SFB mod. I could find you the actual word and all the etymology of the actual word that turns out to be the offspring and everlasting secret and all that stuff. And I would do that for you if you need it. But I'm absolutely certain it does include that idea and should in the text. Of course, it's talking about their intent, not what happened. Was that a question? Who were of old, but again, don't want to change. We're not changing the topic. We're still talking about the Bible and the text and the best possible translation without adding ideas, but leaving no ideas out. By the way, as an example, you can look up the number in the Bible, 103. It only occurs, as far as I know, it only occurs one time, the number 103. And then go to the Greek lexicon and find the original number, which is not 103. It's 100, and it has to mean 100. It can't mean 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. It can't mean that. The actual number in the original, or most original that we can compile, is the number is 103:11:18. 103:11:18. What kind of a number is that? In the King James, it appears 103. In several of the Bibles, it appears 103. But it literally isn't a number. It literally cannot be a number. And they just left off the part requiring in their minds that it's a number. But what would you call it when you have a pre-existent idea about something, and because of that pre-existent idea, you have to subtract something from what you actually find? It's called a presupposition. That's dogmatic and strictly against what the Bible warns more than once. Don't add to, don't take away. But they take away repeatedly in Numbers. They take away repeatedly in etymology of the word, not giving it its proper context. And what does that do to the Bible? It makes it very, very objectionable. Nobody coming in? Just in case, and so you know that I'm serious, you can hit that on a whim. Wow, my camera's out of focus. Not that it mattered a moment ago. All right, so all right, guys, we're going to wrap that up right there unless somebody comes in and they want their brain specifically addressed, which I'm more than happy to do. Yeah, I could, but I don't have YouTube open. You can't do that from StreamYard as far as I can. Can you do that from StreamYard? I don't think you can. All it says is block this idiot, and I'd be blocking myself, and that doesn't really make sense to me. Put user in timeout or block user. Nope, not one of the options I want. Oh, Peebo, peace and respect to you as well. Nope, not coming in, says B. Okay, well, you have a good day anyway. So there. Love you. All right, then. Open a separate. I know how to do it. I'm just not bothering. I mean, there's 3 of you, 4 of you here right now, and no one's lost track, and it's not like it's going to disappear. Oh. Show me a little bit of human face there, bud. That's, well, I hope it was you. You had the name right. Oh, it is you. Okay. Sorry, whenever I put a link in the description or in the title or in the side chat, somehow people have ways to search for that and come in and show me things I never wanted to see at any point in my life. Start over again. SFB, I'm sorry, Peebo Thulu. I'll run down the whole show for you in less than 3 minutes. In order to be guilty, you have to have all applicable knowledge and purposefully not applied it. The only story in the Bible where someone has all possible knowledge, all applicable knowledge, is if they're angels. In chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, a set of angels having perfect knowledge broke the rules, trying to create offspring of a new bloodline so that they could be God. And they're culpable for it. So because they're culpable for it, they will get no forgiveness. I don't know how much value any given person might assign. You're live, Joel. Give me just a second to get my headset on. Thank you. Go ahead, man.
Hey, yeah, sorry I had to log in and do the code and all that stuff to StreamYard.
Yeah, life happens.
So,
yeah, I restrict my channel to 18 and older, so I just don't have to mess with too many folks, you know.
No, I thought you had more to go on with this Bible study. I was going to wait, but yeah.
Well, there's a whole Bible in front of me. I mean, chapter 6 of Genesis is hardly even a good-sized, chewy little morsel there.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'd agree.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I just realized there's something I promised to cover at the beginning, and I didn't, and I'd love to bounce it off of you.
Okay.
Being a sciencey kind of guy and I'm not. I'll freely admit I'm not.
Sure.
There are certain families who have every third or fourth generation anomalous children. The anomaly is that they're much bigger than the rest of their family. And when they're anomalous in that way, like they don't come from tall people, but they're just big people, which, makes no sense when you think about how genes should express themselves. You should look pretty darn similar to your parents. But these people can be, towering over their parents. And something that always occurs when that occurs is there's a great difference between their height and quote unquote wingspan. You know what I'm talking about by what I mean by wingspan?
Their arms?
Yes. Okay, so they're so proud of it they call it their wingspan. When they have a significant difference, they call it their wingspan. Now the rest of us don't. We just call it our arm span because we're not proud of it.
I'm laughing because my wife and I, we pick on our kids all the time about this stuff. So I love it.
Pick on them for what?
Just the quote unquote anomalies and such. We've got. Yeah, so you need to come in the chat, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly, come in the chat.
Yeah. Kelly often tells me that
Kelly,
I have a quote unquote impressive wingspan, as a matter of fact.
An impressive wingspan.
Yes, I do.
Well, that's interesting.
What? Oh, well, you don't. I don't think you have to have an account for StreamYard, but you do have to have a picture. So you can use your INTJ, your combat boot picture. What?
She's got a picture of a singular combat boot? That's just weird.
Yes, she's very weird.
That's kind of normally like weird.
Well, if you can figure out how to log in, we'd love to have you. He's talking about anomalous children right up our alley. Oh, I thought it was a combat boot. She's telling me it's not a combat boot. Hopefully she'll grace us here in the queue. But yes, sir. It's basically so allele groups is what gives the appearance of diversity. What? 2 combat boots. Okay, come and show us. Oh my goodness. But
it's 2. It's not 1. Don't be silly.
Yeah. But,
who would have a picture of 1 combat boot? That's just ridiculous.
Exactly. But yeah. So Gregor Mendel, he's the founder of modern genetics. He talks about it's recessive and dominant genes, and so it's not truly random. It's similar to what we describe as what's called a finite state machine type group, where there's a selection of possible choices. And so every once in a while they seem random, but every once in a while you'll get something that just looks really different. So,
it's not actually random, right?
Right. So like your red hair, for example. It's
right.
It's a recessive gene. So yeah,
very few people have red hair.
Right. And there's all kinds of theories out there that it may become extinct. Some red hair may become extinct, but it's all of the
I'm sure it would over time eventually. Yeah.
The point is that so kids, we've got one of our kids is 6'2". Our daughters are like barely pushing 5 foot. So it's just all over the place.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'0".
6'0", and your wingspan?
I don't know.
You have to measure it. You can't guess.
Well,
I mean, some people just have long, skinny-looking arms, and it's not over their height. It's the same as their height, or within an average tolerance of say 3 to 4 inches within that.
Yeah, Kelly's trying to scream from across the house, and I've already told him yes. That my wife says it's quote an impressive wingspan, if that's a measurement.
Yeah, impressive wings. But the question is not whether or not it's impressive. The question is it greatly over your height? For instance, those who are truly anomalous and are 3rd and 4th generations apart, 3 and 4 generations apart, having this expressed in themselves, have 10 or 11 or 12 inches wingspan over height.
Don't know. Kelly,
I mean, not an inch or 2.
Huh?
Not an inch or 2, like a lot.
Yeah, I don't think mine are that overpronounced.
If you stand erect, flat-footed, barefoot, relaxed, not trying to change the length of your arms where they naturally settle, does your fingertip come to about mid-thigh, or is it 2/3 down to your knee, or is it all the way 2/3 up to nearly your hip?
It is a little below mid thigh. It's about
That's really normal.
about 3 inches above my knee.
I would say
Here she
he's
is.
not a knuckle dragger.
I'm not a knuckle dragger?
No.
There you go.
Right.
See,
Okay. Well,
it's
knuckle
precise
draggers are the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the knuckle draggers. I'm serious. Go to the NBA, go to the National Basketball Association, and look at the statistics of players who are abnormally tall for their family, who do very well in that sport. And you're going to find their wingspan is much greater than their height. And then watch any of those players to make any kind of a reference to a living God. I dare you.
Why? Do they not, or do they?
They never do.
Why? I wonder how come.
Because they're Nephilim.
Leftovers from Genesis 6.
Oh.
They're
Yeah.
literal living Nephilim. They are godless people. They are proud people. They're abusive. That's why they're always in and out of jail. Why their partners can't stay with them normally, because they're oppressors. You got to like being oppressed to be with one of those dudes. And look for NBA stars like that making like the sign of the cross or pointing at the heavens or anything. No.
We're getting funky hairdos. And
What's that?
we're getting funky hair colors and go and hang out with Kim Jong-un.
Yes, right.
Well, it's fine if they do that. You know, of course, that's perfectly socially acceptable. But you won't see them. You won't see them refer to Christ or God at any point. Now they'll say things like "We are God" because they believe they are.
You don't need to make an account.
The whispering isn't working out. It's just I can't understand you.
He's trying to get me to make an account, but you know how it is on YouTube sphere. It's like yuck. I mean, the people like you are few and far between. Otherwise, it's like whoa.
No, so this is StreamYard.
Thanks.
StreamYard. So you click on the little StreamYard link that he put in his chat channel.
You don't need a YouTube account. You need a computer and a set of earbuds.
It doesn't like make you like.
No, you can log in, but no, all you have to do is.
You don't even need an icon. It'll just give you a blank white human white gray background or whatever.
Give permission for your camera and microphone, and since you don't have a camera, you don't worry about the camera. And then you upload just a picture, which I was thinking your little MBTI picture would be fine.
You don't even need one.
And then put a name for yourself, and then start. That's it.
Try Fred. Fred's a nice name.
Yes.
I would just put my chicken on there. You know.
Your chicken?
Chickens.
That's
Chickens
even
are
better.
nice.
She's a chicken hobbit. And Lord of the
A
Rings.
chicken what?
Chicken hobbit.
Yes.
So come grace us with your chicken hobbitness.
Are you talking about Dungeons and Dragons or something?
No, it's Lord of the Rings.
It's Lord of the Rings online video game. Yeah, I'm a big dork in that game, as you can imagine.
He's talking about anomalous children. You'd be perfect.
Oh, my an anomalous child as a chicken hobbit?
We have developed several anomalous children. So
I'm 5'1" and a quarter, and I think I have T-Rex arms, so I don't think I'm a Nephilim. I don't even think I'm a Hobbit Nephilim. Sorry, I have to be a dork. I apologize.
He's smiling. All right.
She has T-Rex arms.
Yes, she's adorable.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the actual topic. Okay, so as Da Vinci noticed in The Man in the Box, human beings standing flat-footed with their palms showing, that is, their fingers extended, right? From the tip of the middle finger to the tip of the opposite middle finger across the chest is very close to their height. Now, he did it as an observation about art and how to draw humans and stuff like that, but it's just true in reality. Now, if I stand flat-footed as Da Vinci's Man in the Box, I don't remember the name of it, whatever man, has a long word, and I stand with my palms facing towards you with my hands open, my fingers extended at about shoulder level, what am I doing?
Being hung on a cross?
I look, yes, that's it. That's why Jesus has to be measured for sin, crucified specifically.
Nice.
Because he's an example to the people of how to be measured for sin. You get it?
Yes. Are you also familiar with the Fibonacci sequence?
That shows up in what we consider beauty and all over nature and the phi spiral of the universe and or the galaxy and all that. Yeah.
And supposedly our arms and fingers and legs and stuff also fit that somehow, I've seen.
Yes, if you take lengths of parts of appendages and compare them to each other, yeah, we're also a Fibonacci.
And then Mrs. Kelly off in the distance reminded also, we found out recently the human inner ear components also fit the Fibonacci sequence.
Not shocking.
Mm-hmm,
You mean the arches in
So I recently started having
the cochlea itself, or
we started doing all this research. There's 3 loops in our inner ears.
yes,
Literally an XYZ gyroscopic
axis.
type,
Yes.
yeah, which is like that is surprising. But yeah, so the components of the inner ear fit the Fibonacci sequence,
Which is really convenient if you don't like falling down all the time.
Well, that's my problem. You know, supposedly either I got something like one of my, she called them my nuggets. I got extra calcium in my head, and one of them got loose and clogged one of those things up, and it makes the spin literally the room spin. So I can't even talk.
Oh yeah.
So, but
your brain is actually registering cilia, hair-like structures. I know you know what it means. Cilia within those microtubules, and a fluid moving across the hairs and pushing them.
Yep.
And that's what your brain is registering, is the hair movement. So if you get a solid object permanently pushing the hairs, well, then you feel like everything's moving that way.
Yep. See?
Yeah.
You said you're not a sciencey guy.
That'd make you sick, make you nauseous, doesn't it?
It can. At the worst of it, you're literally puking everywhere, and yeah, you can't stand.
Right on.
It's fun.
Right on. No, I'm a fan of science. I just don't know a lot, as far as I can tell.
Sorry.
Well, because of the Bible, I looked into some science stuff recently.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that to move sputum out of the lungs, the cilia on those cells have a basal structure in the cilia, and then a double microtubule looks very much like a very deep number 8 and tapered number 8, and then 9 microtubules, singular microtubules that can pull and flex the hair so it can make a sweeping motion, which is freaking amazing. If you're into that sort of thing.
Well, just so you know, real quick, the difference, what sciencey guys like me consider someone else as a science person or not, is basically people that are interested in looking things up, which is what you're doing. And the only thing that's difference between someone that likes to look science stuff up like me and you, that's like quote unquote scientist, is that we get paid for it, is all. So if you can get paid to look stuff up, then you're a scientist, because you have the same mentality.
That makes me a construction worker.
Well,
because that's what I look up and get and apply and get paid for doing.
Well, it's not, so as a scientist, I help figure things out to build like rockets and crap. So it's not too far off.
Right on. Same kind of idea, I guess.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
The difference is you want to look things up. You want to learn. A lot of people don't.
I'm a learning freak. I love learning.
That's the difference. Yeah.
And I have pretty darn good retention, actually. Like I can picture the basal structure in my head of cilia that is for cleaning surfaces within the body, and count the microtubule in the basal structure as I'm sitting here talking to you.
Yep.
But that's all aside the point. Okay, so we have these third and fourth generation anomalous children who don't measure for sin. And the measurement for sin is to imitate the crucifix. Now, here's an odd idea that I think is a necessity of the text, and I would love to bounce this off of you. Palms in their hands. Does that mean tree branches? Because that's what Christians teach. It means tree branches.
Oh, I mean, I could see that. That was the first thing that did come to mind, but I bet you there's probably many more analogies with it.
So in this context that I've adopted, which works actually unanimously, If I say that someone is presenting themselves before me with their palms in their hands, what are they doing?
The first thought was how Jerusalem welcomed the Lord with palm branches. Second thought
Perfect.
was yep,
Right on.
the universal greeting for peace. When you, like, for example, here in the West, we shake your hand. That's from the days of the knights, where they would show
No
that they're
hidden
disarmed.
weapon. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when Jerusalem presents themselves to the Christ and they have palms in their hands,
Mm-hmm.
and you might be aware of this. I don't know if you ever bothered to look this one up. The word palm, as in the tree, which is assumed by Christian what it means. I don't know what's special. Like Christ never said, "Yo, I want coconut branches. That's what makes me happy." That's nowhere in the story. Or date, specifically from that part of the world, date branches. Never requested them one time. But they present themselves with palms in their hands. That is, they are being judged for sin, imitating Christ crucified to eliminate them as Nephilim. What do you think of that idea?
Make the connection with the Nephilim again.
The Nephilim don't measure.
Oh.
They don't measure because they are the result of the original sin. A group of beings who had full knowledge trying to start their own bloodline so that they could be God.
My first thought on that is that since they were not part of the original design code of humans, then that's part of the corruption. That's part, not just the sin, not just the evil, we even call it the corrupt society, but corrupt physiology as well.
So that is physical attribute of original sin in some humans, which is why the giants of AI are not testified to. You don't make war with them. You just go around the city. You just leave them alone because it's a city full of nothing but Nephilim, nothing but giants. And patent clerk, yes. And you don't testify to those who are destined to not prosper. Like, why would you tease them? You see? Like, if they're not going to heaven with flesh, there's no point in testifying to them. You're just giving them a hard time. Although it has come up with some people who believe in some form of God, and I've had that conversation with a few that I think were Nephilim, actual. And I did talk about the destruction of flesh in the lake of fire and the necessities thereof, which has nothing to do with judgment of a spirit. It has nothing to do with meeting God upon death. Those are, I believe, unrelated topics in the Bible.
Okay.
Would you have any questions as to why I would think that, or?
You're actually making me think about a lot of things, so it's
I like
distracting, but nice. But
people,
yeah,
you know, it's funny. People talk to me and they say, I get tired talking to you. So good. I mean, you're aware of the brain. You're aware the brain uses energy, right?
Well, for me, I'm thinking about like 3 or 4 things that you caused me to think about. So you're saying something else. So my brain's like, it's like I'm having to cue the things you say. It's kind of, which I love. I love to think. So by all means, you were saying something about the flood.
I said something about the flood.
Did I misunderstand?
I don't recall referencing the flood specifically, other than they survived the flood. They exist on the planet today. We have evidence of them. And the idea of standing as Christ crucified, and even why Christ was crucified for sin, like to show you how to be measured for sin, that he's measured for sin, all makes perfect sense if it's talking about a comparative distance, your height compared to, and all of this was cued by a description in the Bible. Most people do not remember this part. I know I remember weird stuff, but most people don't remember the words measuring line. You remember measuring line from the Bible?
Like a cubit?
No, measuring line. Line meaning rope. Measuring means something you measure with.
Okay, like a plumb?
Well, it's just a non-stretch piece of line, which is an old term which means rope. It's just a non-stretch rope. Let's see, what's your inseam in your legs?
Oh gosh, 32.
32.
I think.
I'm gonna for easy math, I'm gonna round that down to 30. Although you're taller than that, so it's fine. How big around your waist?
When I'm not fat, it's 30.
Wow, you're a thin dude.
Well, right now it's like 32. So.
Okay, so 30 times 3 is 90. Are you 90 inches tall?
No, what, 72?
You're 72 inches tall at 6 foot. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I took a non-stretch rope and I tied it around your waist and it went all the way down to your ankle twice, that's well over your height. In fact, it's well over most people's height at 90 inches.
Okay.
If you were 30 by 30, right? Okay, so religious people within Christianity have been imitating this by taking a non-stretch rope and tying it around their waist, and it goes twice down to their ankle for we don't know how long, forever, ever since the idea was there. They're imitating a measuring line. You don't need to hold a robe that has no side opening closed.
Wait, yeah,
And preachers aren't supposed to be showing off their waist. That's exactly right.
Huh.
And this has been a long-standing tradition. I don't think they understand what the measuring line is actually for.
I've never thought
But it works 100% of the time. All you need to do is have someone stand as Christ crucified and be a little bit bigger than they are or as big as they are. And you can do a comparative measurement with a non-stretch line, and you know if they're a Nephilim. Take 2 seconds to do.
Interesting. All right.
So when it comes to Judgment Day and we are measured for sin, I think it's going to be pretty darned quick with 12 gates into heaven. And it takes maybe, I think if I was practiced at it, I could probably do it accurately in about 1 1/2 to 2 seconds per person.
All right. Well, I think,
190 centimeters.
Knows it's all
That's
anyway,
190 centimeters is almost 200 or 2 meters. Oh my gosh, Tony. You're not 190 centimeters.
What's 72 inches? I forget.
What's 72 inches in meters? I don't know. Use a calculator. It's under 2 meters.
180, almost 183 centimeters is me.
183. So Tony's just a bit taller than you, probably about 6'1" or 6'2", something like that. 190 centimeters, is that right?
190 is 74.8 inches. So yeah, 6'2", 6'3".
So he says it's 6'4", and he's brilliant, but he's not usually creative in humor. Like, he wouldn't lie about that, is what I'm trying to say. He is creative in humor, but he wouldn't lie about something like that.
My wife says I have a dry humor that not many kids can understand. But so what about like what's it called?
That was hilarious.
Thank you. So there are giants today. Andre the Giant. What do they call it? There's a name for, it's like a disease. Now
he had a pituitary problem,
right?
So that's a birth defect, and it doesn't count.
Okay.
Birth defects aren't part of this equation.
Yeah, there's a name for somebody that's got it's some sort of genetic type disease where their bones don't stop growing.
I think that's just called gigantism.
Yeah, gigantism. Yeah.
I think that's not the medical term, of course.
Yeah, they usually have very significant health problems, not just being tall.
Yeah, when your body doesn't grow right, doesn't form right, doesn't pube right, then yeah, you're going to be sick and you're going to die early. You just about bet on that. But I'm not talking about people with health problems. In fact, I'm talking about like basketball stars and guys like that,
right.
And women too, not just men. There are women like this, who would not measure against original sin, and they don't have health problems. In fact, they're usually intelligent and handsome or beautiful. Not to be handsome in the most generic way. They're attractive looking people. But they're usually tyrants and godless and generally kind of like displeased with their life, no matter how good it is.
Well, I guess the last seeming, or the most relevant seeming distinction, I guess, for this is, are these the phenom that we're talking about today? Are they just leftovers from a genetic trace? Back when Noah's family may have, the kids back then intermingled, before Noah's sons and their wives. And
No,
so
no,
we
no
see allele
Nephilim go
traits.
on to the ark, nor any offspring that's part Nephilim go on, even if it's recessive.
Well,
That's
that was
not
the
part of the
question.
story. Right.
That's what I was trying to say. Is it part of a genetic trace, before all then, and that's what we see remnants of today in the allele groups versus, are demons still, having sex with women today? Kind of.
I don't think it needs more than one occurrence, which is
Okay.
why it's so infrequent and only in certain families.
Okay.
It's highly unusual, and it's obvious when you see
Well, and
some.
the reason.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to mention the reason why I don't think either possibility is too crazy. Well, I mean, it's it's highly controversial, but I've heard and read all kinds of stories of women that talk about feeling like they've been raped in their sleep, and just all kinds of just really crazy stories, and it makes you wonder, if it still goes on today or not.
Okay, this at first is going to sound like I am diminishing someone's experience. I am not.
Well, and they sell,
but
I don't
it's
think they ever have
well. Let
children
me
after
present the
this,
idea.
Yeah.
Your eyeballs have never seen anything their entire existence. Your brain saw it. Your experience you experience through your brain, even though it uses sensors in your body to have that experience. But there's literally no difference in the knowable. There's nothing knowable in the difference between, for a brain, in the difference between a very well played out movie and something you actually experience.
It's fascinating you bring this up, Richard, because I was just not even a week or two ago reading about some of this in neuroscience articles, specifically talking about how they're wondering if our brain itself, not just our sensory organs, are literal filters to what we.
That's the way I take it.
Reality, huh?
That's the way I take it.
Well, that's neuroscience. That's modern neuroscience. It's parallel with all kinds of the psychotropic type medications out there. That our eyes are not the truth. They're not giving us the.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
No, your eyeballs are not a perfect representation of what is around you until you have several reviews of what is around you in a singular environment that didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer you do that, the better your picture becomes. It's just like if you notice that when you meet a new human, doesn't even matter, as long as it's fairly sudden that you met them. Like you didn't see them approaching from 300 yards away, but you, like a friend introduced you to another friend in some tight space, like a room, a singular room. As soon as you look at the human being and whatever social appropriate, look for hand is open, reach for hand, all that. As soon as you look at their face, what your eyeballs will do, and you can't help it, is your eyeballs will go like all over their face.
Searching for
because you're reviewing it, you're getting a main picture, and then you're refining it, reviewing it, making corrections, and trying to form an accurate view of their face.
Yeah.
And it happens super fast.
You just instantly reminded me of people that have high order autistic issues. Yeah. I forget this one lady, she's kind of famous now. She says the reason why she couldn't look at somebody's face is because when she first looks at somebody, it's like taking 1,000 pictures of that person's face in her mind. And so she just has to look away real fast. Yeah. It's not that she's rude or anything. It's just overwhelming.
I'm sure it's for someone who's a certain spectrum autism, that could be overwhelming. Just too much sensory input at one problem is, one of those larger aspects, more common aspects of autism. Yeah, I could totally see that making sense. Yeah, because that's what you're doing is you're taking thousands of pictures and making a composite of the human's face.
Mm-hmm.
Super fast. It's amazing.
Yep, we try to recreate that with video. What's called analytics, facial recognition stuff. Yeah, gets pretty complicated.
Sure. Yeah, and doesn't work all that great right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's only as good as your database.
Well, that's also true. It's only as good as your database and the detail in the overlapping pictures where they disagree. I would think that things we program have trouble deciding which one is the right picture in small detail.
Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of different techniques to it, but the point was that it is extremely complicated. The fact that we can do it in just milliseconds is a miracle by itself.
Yeah, that alone is amazing. Okay. I'm having a good time talking to you. We're not talking about the show anymore, but that's okay. We don't have to. Would you tell me, Joel, if you would please?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want to answer, I totally understand. I'm not going to hold that against you, make fun of you, judge you on that. Not everyone wants to answer this question. What's the most difficult part of the Bible? Most difficult part?
Yeah. Like for me personally or in general? I don't think I've ever thought of that before.
I would prefer you personally, but if you said what it was generally, it'd probably still be you personally.
Sure. Dude, okay. You get to give me a little while then, because I don't think I've ever thought of it. The most difficult part as far as like comprehension?
Well, you can take the question however you want.
Yeah.
It's kind of an open question. It's open in a couple different ways.
Yeah, because first thought was, what was the most difficult part to accept? And I can't think of anything right now. And so then my mind's like, okay, what's probably the least understandable? Which I wanted to, my first thought on that was the Trinity doctrine, which I really don't like talking about that because it, goes off in wrong. We've talked about this before, you and I. It exposes, or not, maybe not you and I, but maybe Bruce and I, maybe exposes those who don't have the loving, polite heart, the fruit of the Spirit that we're supposed to have. But other than that, that's probably, maybe Trinity is probably the most difficult.
And what did we say before? Let me address Titan real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The airplane crashes and the survivors are buried in their home country, of course. He just made a nonsensical. He was just being humorous.
I had to take a second to figure out what you were trying to say with aircraft survivors.
An airplane crash. You make a big deal. It's a distraction method. It's like you're driving a bus. At the first bus stop is picked up 5 passengers. At the second one, dropped off 6. At the third one are picked up 5. At the fourth one are dropped off 2. You now have 3 people left on the bus. How old is the bus driver's mom? You know the answer, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually do.
Do tell.
Well, who was the bus driver?
I forget.
I said, you're driving a bus.
Oh, I'm the bus driver?
Yeah. How old is the bus driver's mom? So everybody would know that. So it's a distraction.
It's like,
and that's what he was doing there.
People to spell shop.
Yeah, exactly. Those things. Same thing. Those are shorter ones that are a little less distracting, kind of predictable. But yeah, it's one of those things. But you were saying before, I love Tony. I really do. I've had like private, personal, off the air conversations with Tony, and Tony is just a fascinating human being, actually.
Kelly says those are the best jokes, by the way.
Like spell silk.
Spell silk?
Yeah.
Spell silk.
Oh, SILK.
What do cows drink?
Water.
He saw that one coming.
No, I know that one.
I have made so many people slip up on that, and I'm such a dork. I giggle every time.
What's the hardest part of the Bible, Kelly? That was right. Is that the right question? What's the hardest part?
The hardest part for me was twofold, actually. One is, and this is actually, a lot of people just take this for granted. Oh, that's easy. And if you really think about it, it's not. Okay, so forgiveness and the mechanics and requirements thereof. How does one actually forgive? The other one is
clarifying question.
Loving your enemies. Is it love as in feelings, or is it love as in action, or is it required both? And those
are pretty
things I've
good.
rolled over in my head my whole freaking life. So with the loving the enemies part, what?
He's raising his hand.
Oh,
I
go
can't
ahead. I
see.
can't see you, honey. Sorry.
Oh, that's sweet. You called me honey. I feel all endeared and stuff. So, okay. So when you say words like grace, love, and forgiveness, are you talking about from the point of view of heaven or from us?
As a human being.
From us?
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So from our point of view, how do we forgive? All right. You're a mom, yeah?
So yeah, it's difficult because it's like, okay, so you see on Facebook, oh,
She's a mom times 8.
this one freaking slave.
Times more than that, I guess. We've adopted a few, huh?
Oh, anybody that's my kid.
You've had 8 natural children? What a trooper. Holy crap.
Got one left in the house.
How?
Oh, in the house. Yeah, I was like, what? Anyway,
he's like 25 or 26. How old's Matt now?
I can't believe you can stand up.
She's got back problems.
yeah, praise God, I can still stand up. My goodness, but so like you see it on Facebook. I always thought this was silly. You forgive others because it's more for yourself.
Is there any chance she could
them.
sit closer?
What's that?
Is there any chance you could sit closer?
Oh yeah, let me try. Hang on.
Little distant and echoey.
Yeah, I apologize.
I got my setup here for work, so I got laptops and who knows what other junk here. Hold on,
Hey, here's an idea. Kick him out of his chair.
Whoa.
Okay,
I've
here.
been trying to get her to move in this area.
Can you hear me better, hon?
Here.
I hope you can.
Here, move over there.
Okay, I can tell by the background noise in your voice. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. No, I've seen like on Facebook, oh, you forgive others for yourself, not for them. I'm like, okay, that doesn't help me at all. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
So, no, it's useless. But so I always pray when I pray for God to forgive me of my sins, to give me the heart that He has, to forgive in the way in which He needs me to.
Okay.
For me, this is so cursory because I think that forgiveness is actually a very, very deep and multifaceted meaning. But for me, it's okay. I have a lot of questions too. This is I apologize.
He makes you think, doesn't he?
No, I thought about this a lot. But
this
how
is
do
something
I?
that you and I started, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Yeah, we're playing a video game together. I'm like, hey man, you ever really thought about what is forgiveness?
In fact, if I dare bring up this old memory real quick, this I forget the other guy's name that was trying to flirt with you that you didn't even know was flirting with you.
Who?
I forget his name. There's some other guy that I didn't even know I had competition with, and this was the topic that made you fall in love with me instead of him.
Wait! I didn't know there was anybody else trying to flirt with me.
I forget his name. So the J. He was.
Wasn't last week. Okay.
Yeah, it was like 100 years ago now. But he's just a friend.
I know, but
he
still,
was
go
like
ahead.
in his 20s.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was in my 30s. Anyway,
it's Kelly, right?
Yeah, my name is Kelly. Nice to meet you.
Kelly, nice to meet you too, and hear you easily. Thank you. I have hearing loss.
Oh.
Old stories. Anyway, okay. So, can you justify to me God's grace, love, and forgiveness for us?
Justify it? What do you mean?
Explain how that's possible.
How that's oh my goodness, I don't know the mind of God. He's amazing. I mean, I've struggled.
You read the Bible, right?
Absolutely. I've struggled
with. Okay, so you remember what it says about him?
About how he forgives?
Sure. Why?
Like basically the sin just is blotted away.
How would that be accomplished?
I have no idea. Other than through Jesus' sacrifice.
I want to lead you through a line of logic.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to lead you through a line of logic. Can you name for me the simplest thing in existence that you're aware of? That you're aware of. The simplest thing you're aware of.
I don't know. I don't see things like that. I'm sorry.
A bit.
Could you pick something anyway, right now, just off the cuff?
No, I actually can't because it's like nothing is. Even the single cell is not simple. Go
simpler.
I can't. I don't know. Because
how How about some
Yeah,
emotional state, or perhaps a singular element, or perhaps the mind of a child? I mean, you could pick literally anything.
can you pick for me of those? Because to me,
Even,
they're none.
I was thinking a computer bit, but even that's extremely complex.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's very difficult to.
He was bringing up hydrogen earlier.
Yeah, I used as an example of myself and my own ability to forgive myself and others. I used an example of hydrogen.
Okay.
Because hydrogen is the simplest element that I know of. Like, technically, it's the simplest whole element that I know of.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, it's smallest. It's got the least crap going on as far as we know, I guess. And
Yes.
and I asked the question, do I know everything about hydrogen? And the answer is no, I don't. Do you think there's anything that, Kelly, you could tell me everything there is possible to know? Any topic at
Absolutely
all
not.
you think you know everything about?
No,
Oh.
I'm not that arrogant.
Quanta is technically the smallest thing.
No,
Simplest thing
he's
possible.
asking me, is there anything I could
Yeah,
say
no,
I know
I was-
everything
I was
about?
interrupting. It just dawned on me.
That's
The
called
most-
interrupting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. It's perfect.
Quanta is the simplest thing possible.
Okay, so
can-
Kelly, is it safe to say that there is nothing you know everything about?
Of course not.
Okay. Then is it safe to say that you have limited knowledge about what you do know?
Absolutely.
Does it make sense to make some bad decisions with limited knowledge?
Obviously. Yes, sir.
Okay. So tell me someone on this earth who has all knowledge.
Currently on this God.
Sure. No. I say on the earth, like a person on the earth.
None, of course.
Okay. Is there anyone who knows everything about any topic?
Scott.
No, except God.
No. That's right. We're all working in partial information with some failure.
Yes.
Okay. So it's
love the
appropriate
basic
to say that we have limited information according to the Bible. My people perish for lack of understanding, and other lines like that.
Mhm.
That God understands. He knows that we have limited knowledge. He speaks about our failures, and we have failures. All that makes sense?
You know what? This is a very odd thing to happen on the same day. I was just speaking with a girlfriend of mine in my game over Discord together about God remembers, and thank God, God remembers that we're dust, because the best any person that wants to follow God can do is to follow God the best way that is detailed per their understanding in the Bible at any given moment, and it
Which
can
is flawed.
Yeah, and
I mean, their understanding, not the Bible.
Pardon?
I mean, their understanding of it, not the Bible itself.
Yeah, and God knows
Sure.
that there's going to be things that we're going to get caught up on, and thank God he's full of grace. And I told her, and I said, and this is why I'm not going to, because I said, okay, look, you got the 10 Commandments. They're real simple: don't murder, don't steal, pretty cut and dry. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
so to me, that's a simple choice. Okay, are you going to murder him? Are you going to steal from him or not? I said, but many, many, many other subjects in the Bible are a lot more complicated. How it's more difficult to understand. So the best you can do is the best you can do, and pray God, that he'll give you his wisdom if you're in error in any of those things. And I go, and that's
Sure.
why I'm not going to sit here in judgment over you. I said, because you're understanding of what the Bible says in this subject. I'm not going to get too personal, of course, but I said, may be absolutely correct, and I could be wrong, or vice versa.
Could be
And I
either
go,
way, yeah.
so yeah, I said, so if God can give us the grace to, throughout our lives, have periods where we might misunderstand a particular portion of the Bible, then I can do
Sure.
the same for you, and you could do the same for me. And
Okay,
I'm
now
not
tell me
gonna-
where in life does that not apply?
Well, my first examples were like stealing from somebody else.
Okay, why is stealing wrong?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Well, first of all, for obvious reasons, goodness. Well, no, not because of somebody, not because of some discipline thing, but because it doesn't belong to you, and it's going to hurt the other person to take that away from them, that which is rightful.
Which is more important to you, your pain or someone else's?
Someone else's pain. I don't want to hurt nobody.
Well, socialists disagree. Not to get too
Well,
political,
that's because
but-
socialists have rationalized that they're somehow entitled. That's
Yeah,
wrong.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Anyway, go ahead.
They're
Sorry,
selfishness.
Richard.
Okay, so really, I could say the person is being they're only concentrating on self. They're being selfish. I could say
Sure.
that
Oh, wait. What do you mean?
when they steal.
Yes, I would agree. That is
You've
selfish. Yes.
Okay, why
pardon
else
if
is-
you heard that.
So we've already considered that it hurts the other person. It takes something from them, or else it wouldn't be a theft. But it does benefit someone as well.
Well,
it benefits
not in the
the
long
thief.
term.
That's going to be a further topic. But for now, at least in the first moments, it does benefit the thief.
For the first moments, maybe.
So that reminds me. Yeah. So Kelly and I, we have these debates about whether or not I should leave my wallet in my car or not. I keep telling
I
her
would
that-
think not. It's
Yeah.
inviting
Thank
a
you,
thief.
Richard.
I keep telling her that if somebody steals my stuff, it means that they just needed it more than I did.
No.
That's one way to look at it. If you can afford to lose those items, you're more than what. Hey, you know what? Do accidental giftings. Do purposeful giftings. That's great.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with throwing down a $20 bill while you're walking down the sidewalk in the middle of a
Oh,
big
I love
city.
that. That's fun. Yeah, that's fun. Can you imagine?
You don't
how
know where the
fun
wind's
that
going to
little
take
kid-
it and who's going to get that, but you just gifted somebody.
I suspect that's how I got my job at SpaceX, because we came here to this area where I'm at, in
Yeah.
Waco, and we were on unemployment, so we were on borrowed money. And
Yeah.
we're given, like you just said, $20 here, $100 there to people on the street, and then we're literally looking at going homeless, and all of a sudden, boom. Like while I was in the VA parking lot about to go on homeless assistance, SpaceX called and hired me.
Yeah.
Like that's
Sweet.
something- Yes. It's a whole other story. Sorry.
No,
Anyway.
it's fine. Okay, so it seems to me that God's grace is not a gift. The reason I say that is because God understands we're ignorant, proclaims as much, and says that we are given grace, which makes perfect sense in the face of our ignorance. After all, I can justify ignorance and grace. Grace in the face of ignorance is perfectly just, right?
Yeah.
But I can't find a way to justify ignorance and guilt. Okay? So I have to ask the question, when the person steals, are they guilty?
Yeah, if they in fact stole, yes.
Okay, just the fact that they took something that didn't belong to them means they are guilty of theft.
If they understand that item that they took is being taken intentionally from somebody else that they know they know that thing does in fact belong to someone else and they shouldn't touch it.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, now you're requiring of them that they comply with social standards. Is it objectively true that theft is wrong?
Yes.
Are you talking about?
Okay, how are you going to say that theft is wrong? Let me see if it's objective or subjective. A man can't afford and doesn't have medical coverage for an oxygen tank. He's oxygen deprived and he's slowly dying and he knows what's wrong. So he fakes an injury, even takes a razor and maybe hurts himself on purpose so he can get into an emergency room, get into the triage, and steal an oxygen mask and tank.
Question for you. Isn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. You guys are the gentlemen.
Maybe.
Isn't there something in the Bible? What do you say?
I said maybe.
Maybe.
I was going to say stop.
You're going to call me names I'm not necessarily going to agree with you.
Isn't there something in the Bible about somebody being hungry and something about they can take?
Yes, if you're hungry,
Showbread.
Yes, and if you harvest grain from somebody else's field, then you're allowed to have that.
So you
food.
can eat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that would be the first thing. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Of course, I don't know specifically where that's found in the Bible, but I do remember that story. That's what I thought of originally.
Okay, but I don't know
It's
how that applies to medical equipment, because you're not the component missing is you're not working for the medical field component versus you have to work in the field.
I think her comparison was their necessity of life to continue living.
Is it that versus having to offer some sort of labor for that?
or some sort of compensation, even
Yeah.
if over time. Yeah.
Well, you can't buy an oxygen tank, right?
Hmm.
You can't just pull cash out of your pocket. You can't trade for an oxygen tank. You have to have, well, I guess you might know somebody, but generally speaking, you have to have insurance.
Okay.
And you have to trade them out, and it has to be a regular thing that some doctor prescribed. You can't just go get an oxygen tank.
Or you can make your own oxygen, but that's probably beyond the point.
You go to a welding supply store and just breathe low grade oxygen. It's still oxygen. You could just do that. It's literally the same thing. It just might have a little bit of oil or something in it.
Well,
You'll be all right.
Again, the point was, so the difference would be walking into a farmer's house and just taking his bread. The farmer's already made the bread, versus having to go harvest the wheat yourself, grind it, and then make your bread.
Well,
Sure.
I'm a little confused because we went kind of bird walked, and maybe we didn't bird walk, but way off the topic of like forgiveness. And
well, you said what I'm trying to show you is that no one is responsible, no one can be, but that's because of limited knowledge, and eventually they are not guilty.
Well, that's kind of why
that's
I was
what I'm trying to show
her. Yeah, that's why I was kind of telling her, that God pities us. He looks upon us and pities us, remembers that we're dust. And he understands that we are going to have limited knowledge. And that's kind of what I was telling her. And I said, and if God can give me the grace to probably
you already have it. You already have that grace. You
Yeah,
already have that grace to
but-
forgive anyone at any time of anything. You already have it.
Well,
If you understand that humans have limited knowledge
Gentlemen,
and that they make bad decisions at times based on partial knowledge, and you understand that about yourself, I don't know why you wouldn't understand that about others.
Well, okay. So things happened when I was a kid that anybody with half a brain would know isn't the right thing to do, and yet they chose to do it anyway. And they're completely, they don't care. Nobody, I mean, there's one that said that they were sorry without saying they were sorry. And I knew what he was trying to do. And it was like instantaneous forgiveness. And my heart felt so much relief.
Long story short, you say you basically were jaded by past experience?
No, it made it difficult. And there's a couple of relatives still alive today that live in their own, God love them, fantasy land that they've constructed willfully to avoid taking responsibility in that. They do it on purpose. So it's not limited knowledge. They know what they did was wrong, but they absolutely willfully choose to.
How'd they know that?
Huh?
How'd they know it was wrong?
Easy. Yeah. When you're a mother or somebody that's going through what I went through, there are things you do. Yeah, there are things you protect your kids from. You don't let it happen. Stand up for the bad guy and then completely disown the one that was hurt because of your choice to not.
That's going to be really hard to break down because now you have a person acting on their love for two different people and judging between them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one of them wasn't even hers. Actually, three of them.
It's going to make this really complicated.
But okay, so what that boils down to, if I could boil it down to anything in the most simplistic terms, of course, probably leaving out far too much, but just for the sake of conversation.
Okay.
Forgiveness, this is the hardest part for me. Forgiveness as it pertains to those who are willfully engaging in behaviors they know to be wrong.
What do you mean by willfully?
Willfully, meaning they know it's wrong and they still do it.
If they knew it was wrong, they wouldn't do it.
That assumes a lot. There's a lot. There are actual freaking.
Now they know there are laws and rules and social standards that tell them it's wrong. If that's what you mean by they know it's wrong, but what I mean by they know it's wrong is they have personal knowledge and understanding to the point that they have come to a right decision about it. In which case they wouldn't do it.
That assumes a lot. A lot of people do things that they know is wrong, like homosexual.
We're using two different definitions of no. You and I are using two different definitions of no. Tell me what it is to know something.
Like a Nazi, maybe? Do Nazis know that killing Jews is wrong? Yeah.
No, they knew it was right.
Well, they may have known it was legally okay, but I mean,
No, they
I
knew it
believe-
was the right thing to do.
I believe that God has hardwired within each and one of us, whether we choose to rationalize and ignore and be willfully ignorant, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, we understand what's right and wrong. You know, if we go up and we go knife somebody that's completely innocent in the broad daylight and murder them, we understand that's wrong. I mean, it's just something we feel it on the inside.
Universal moral.
Sure, on the real
Universal
obvious
moral
stuff
code,
like that,
right.
it's pretty easy.
Yeah, and this is the kind of stuff that I'm referring to, and that it would take an awful lot of self-deception and delusion, you know, just being delusional on purpose to deny that these things are
You can't say
wrong.
delusional on purpose, because then they're not deluded.
Yeah, they delude themselves.
No, not they.
Absolutely.
A person doesn't delude themselves on purpose.
Yeah, oftentimes I've seen it. Yes, they do.
What do you mean?
But
Now I have
not
to.
everybody,
I need
not
another
everybody.
definition. What do you mean by deluded? If it's on
They
purpose,
convince themselves something that isn't so to be so.
how? Like by through brainwashing themselves through
Themselves,
extreme
yes.
repetition, and
Absolutely.
I guess it can be done. It'd be hard to do, but
It would. Well, yeah, it would be. And that's why, and you can see it seep through. You can see reality just kind of, you know, flash before their eyes for a split second.
so
and then they
so
immediately talk
they
about it.
lie, and then they come to believe their own lie. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
that's highly.
and that-
Yes,
that's
it does
actually-
happen.
That's actually giving them the benefit of the doubt. That almost like introduces a level of almost, I don't even know how to put this into words. It's difficult.
Grace or kindness?
Well, there are some that will lie to themselves until they believe what they're saying is the truth. Yes. And then there's some that they know what the truth is and they just simply will not face it.
It's like a rationalization.
Okay, I think there's something that needs differentiated here. The difference between understanding a theory of a thing and understanding the thing. Because I don't think that there is such thing as a human being who's guilty.
You don't think that human beings can be guilty?
No way. They'd have to know everything.
Well, they know what they do know, and if they operate like God says, if you think it's a sin, don't do it.
Yeah, can they be
Well, I
guilty of
think
what they
guilt
do
is
know?
a sin quite literally because it can separate you from God. You're now missing the mark.
It
So
depends
just
on
being-
if you are guilty.
Just perceiving yourself as guilty can be sin. But do you see what I mean by the difference between understanding an idea about something and understanding the idea itself? It's like saying, okay, let's take something simple, theft.
That's
A person
what I was getting at.
could perfectly understand that it's against the law, that it takes from others when you have no right, that it hurts those others, whomever they may be, and that's why there's civil law against it. Have you ever heard someone in prison say, "I'm sorry I got caught"?
Well, they're not going to
Instead
confess
of,
to that.
"I'm sorry I stole"?
Well, they actually, it's rare to find somebody that's been to prison that even takes responsibility for what they did to land there.
But
It's
in the
always
case when
somebody
they do.
else's fault, oftentimes anyway.
Well, that's another kind of denial. But you
that's
know what
what
I'm
I'm
talking
referring
about.
to.
People will regret getting caught and not regret the act.
Yeah.
Why is that true?
Because they're sociopaths.
Okay, so they have a
entirely-
dysfunction.
It's entirely possible they've been given over to a depraved mind.
Which the Bible does talk about, yes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So if you were given over to a depraved mind or you were a sociopath, did you ask for that?
Yeah, essentially by engaging.
Who
in
asked to be a
behaviors-
sociopath?
Those that engage in behaviors over a long period of time that go against God, God says, "Okay, I've had enough," and gives you over.
He's
to
talking
I,
about the
motivation.
I get that, but what I'm asking you is, did they choose it, or is that just a fact of their reality?
I think that oftentimes they've chosen it over time.
Even sociopaths?
Yes.
This is why you
especially
can't forgive.
sociopaths.
There it is, right there. This is why you can't forgive, is because you think these people have a mind as sound as yours.
Okay,
That's
here's the thing.
challenging.
No, it's actually not. And
Okay.
what I mean is that when God gives you over to a depraved mind, It
Yeah.
means that you've continually engaged in behaviors and understanding that they're wrong, and yet choosing to and continue to engage in those behaviors. And God says, I give up. And so at that point, nothing about that person can be trusted. Everything, all of their judgments and everything are going to be all over the place. They're not going to make any
Right.
logical sense anymore. They don't care anymore.
So
And-
is this where
Can
conscience
someone
comes
be
in?
saved after they were given over to depravity?
Well, the Bible says that if somebody returns to a sinful lifestyle, they're done. That's it.
Okay, so that's given over to depravity. Is there
Yeah.
no hope of redemption? Is that what you're saying?
That's what the Bible seems to say.
No,
I
the
like to
Bible
bring up-
doesn't mention it on that topic in that moment.
I like to answer that there is only one unforgivable sin that I know of.
Well, and I think
Thank
that what you're doing is I think you're misapplying my view of the people that I have difficulty forgiving as being
Why?
what we just talked about, which is sociopathy, being given over to a depraved mind, as being a separate subject. I can compartmentalize different subjects and speak about multiple different topics, but not be meaning one to be connected to another.
Well, let's
I
try to
think
hit the
that-
middle of the road if
I
those are
think-
too extreme.
I think, well, I was actually married to someone who was diagnosed sociopath. I was 15 years, so I know exactly how this
Wow.
works.
Okay.
But as far as the people that I'm referring to, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. We were just talking about two different subjects so far as I knew. I do think, and again, separate subject line rather than mental illness, that some people will lie to themselves enough to believe something that is false is true. And I do also believe that there are others that just simply, they don't even bother lying to themselves. They just felt like doing it. They don't feel bad. And heck, they do it again. You know, they just don't care. I don't know. It seems to me, at least upon what I've observed, that it's more likely than not that the people that I'm referring to have, I say lie to themselves, but I think it's more they have wholesale blocked out everything pertaining to that event except that which they want to keep relevant in their mind,
Their
even
narrative.
if it's their narrative. That's right.
Sure. Absolutely,
and-
they do.
Yeah. So now my question as far as forgiveness goes, this is where the rubber meets the road, is that, and it's similar, I should say, to loving my enemies as myself, is it, okay, so loving my enemies myself, this is what I did with God, and come to find out, C.S. Lewis mentioned it, which blew my ever-loving mind, but about loving your enemies, he says, even if you don't love your enemies, he says, behave as if you do.
That's
And
a lie.
Love it. Well, this is something that I discovered myself, and I prayed to God this. I said, please, Lord, that so to me, the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. You don't care anymore.
I
And that's
agree.
the problem I struggle with. And I prayed to God, I said, that I don't love them with my heart at all. I mean, none. It's gone. You go through the stuff I've been through, you're like, it literally
Are you a little
shuts off.
apathetic, you're saying?
I struggle with it with certain situations, especially depending on severity. And so I told God, I said, but I want to love my enemies the way you need me to love my enemies, because however I think doesn't matter. What you think matters entirely. And I said, so what I want to do, God, is I'm going to love them with my actions.
There's so
And-
many times I wanted to stop you because you keep going on and I'm losing track of what you said. And now I've forgotten about 3 things that I thought might be important to you. So I'm going to ask you to make an assertion, stop, so I can try to keep up with this.
Well, it's kind of like more of a story rather than assertion. There's no claim being made here. I'm just telling you
No, there's
how I
lots of claims
approach
in
God.
there. There was lots of claims before you ever got there.
What
I
claim
mean,
did
I
I
understand
make?
that's what you're talking about right now.
I didn't make a claim. I said it seems like.
Is people can compartmentalize to the point that they no longer consider the part that's out of their liking a claim.
I don't even know what
See,
you're talking
that's a claim.
about. Well, wait.
It's what you said like 5 minutes ago.
No, meaning that I can talk about 2 entirely separate subjects without them being related.
Yes, and that's fine. And something you said a few minutes ago, I don't know how long it was that people who have the ability to do things that you think are irrational.
I never said that at all.
Did you use those words? No, You didn't use those words, but I'm not a tape recorder. I'm paraphrasing. What you said was some people have the ability to force out of their mind and memory things they don't like about events, right?
I said that it seems like they have wholesale blocked it out.
Okay, so those are the words you use. You do remember saying it, okay?
Yeah. Well,
when you say they have the ability to block it out, what do you mean by that?
Well, like the proverbial ostrich in the sand.
They lie to themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have the ability to block things out like that?
Not if I'm honest. No.
Okay, so because you don't have that ability, you're calling them dishonest.
Oh, because they have to ignore so much and seem to have ignored so much. Yeah, I think they're dishonest.
If I may, I think she's making the distinguishing point between those who are honest with themselves and those who are dishonest. Dishonest people not only lie to others, they lie to themselves to be able to create these false narratives.
Right.
Versus
Sure they do.
if somebody wants to genuinely be honest with themselves, much less others, much less the Lord, they're a lot more self-introspective and will examine their actions versus those who are just literally deceiving themselves on purpose do not.
Okay. So is it, if I said it's unusual for a person to take that lightly, apply it way too often other than in like really catastrophic stuff, would I be accurate if I said that was unusual for someone to do that?
I would say I would wish. I think it's far more common that people do lie to themselves.
No, I mean, on the big topic stuff, I can understand. I have a lapse of memory. I can't remember my mom and her casket. I know I saw my mom in her casket. I have no recollection of that. Okay?
Well, we're not talking
so
about
I know what you're talking about. Your brain can get rid of things if they're too traumatic. All right?
Sure.
But what I'm saying is when that is applied in things that are not traumatic in everyday life, where you are kind of creating your own reality in your memory so that it suits your behaviors and it suits your belief system so that you can just self-confirm everything you want to, wouldn't you say that's unusual?
I think that's probably different for different people's, lives. And I think that's what Kelly's referring to. She's got people that's been her norm in her life has been people that willfully ignore reality.
Yes.
Especially with past events, to be able to, like you just described, be able to kind of pretend to have a normal or even, responsible life. They bury
would you consider that dysfunctional?
Very.
And dishonest. Because
dysfunctional and dishonest. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so
I'm sorry.
For guys like you and I, it's gracefully, thankfully rare. But for some people like poor Kelly here, that's the norm.
Well, I'm not going to say that though.
Well,
because
it's more common than you than it has been for.
Well, no, it was in my childhood because that was my actual freaking family.
Your forming years,
but formative years, yeah. But in 47 years, I actually find that most people that I've interacted with try very hard to be honest, to see things as they are, and they check themselves with other people and certainly other believers or other friends and stuff and say, hey, am I seeing this right? And they're honest enough to ask these questions because they want to come to a truthful conclusion. So yeah, the people that I've dealt with that I'm referring to, of course, are very few compared to the general people that I interact with. Most people do try to be.
So that's what
real.
Richard's trying to say. He's thinking that the people you're talking about are rare.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so definitionally, is any rare brain state abnormal?
Well, that's the entire definition of psychology. Yes. Can we have better questions? These are so simple. I don't understand why these simple questions are being asked.
I don't understand why you don't get this. They're abnormal, and you won't forgive them for being abnormal. It's like kicking a guy in a wheelchair.
But that's the thing. You're assuming that they're disabled through no fault of their own.
Yes. No. They definitionally are disabled in some way that allows them to do or requires them to do things that don't make sense to you because you don't have that disability.
Are they morally disabled?
Well, again, you're assuming that they're disabled. I don't necessarily assume they're disabled because I've known these people my entire life.
Are they morally disabled?
Well, what do you mean by disabled then?
I mean, they're dishonest. It's dishonest.
Willful.
Dishonesty. Yeah. I mean, and if there was trust me, goodness, if there was a possibility that it could be anything honest about their, what you're calling disability, which isn't what it is, if there was any possible way that it could be, some kind of big misunderstanding,
No fault of their own.
yeah, or very little fault of their own, then I would be like, oh, okay, it would be a whole lot easier for me. But that's not the case, sadly. And
Okay.
as far as forgiveness goes, like I said, I pray to God to help me forgive in the way that He forgives us. Notice, however, and tell me where I could be wrong on this, that when God forgives us, He requires us to apologize and repent, to turn away.
How do we do that?
People that are unrepentant. You know what I'm saying?
How do we change our mind and turn away and repent? How do we do that?
By acknowledging that we're doing something wrong and stop doing it.
That's not it. No, that's not it. How do you acknowledge you're doing something wrong?
Because you know it's wrong.
Okay, how do you learn something's wrong?
Confessing your sin.
Yeah, confess your sin and then repent.
You got new information. You got new information. That's what causes repentance. I once repented the existence of Santa Claus.
Or it's not just new information. It's just you stop lying to yourself. Exactly. And you say, okay, I'm done lying to myself. I'm going to turn away from this sin.
Okay, if you were lying to yourself thoroughly, then you didn't think you were lying to yourself. That you were lying to yourself is new information.
No, they knew it all along. They just denied it.
Then they weren't lying to themselves. They were only lying to you.
They were lying to themselves and to me.
And to others, yeah. And to God.
And to God. Yep. That's right.
Okay.
And poor God just sits there and waits.
Yeah. So my life.
I think that runs out that topic pretty much, though.
Yeah, I had to.
Well, I was just thinking, I don't think God just sits there. I think God does everything in His power short of forcing us to try to get us to recognize our sin, try to get us to reconcile with others and with Him.
Yes, sir.
And the reconciliation is easy. We're ignorant. End of story.
Well,
that's it. That's all that's required.
There is a willful component to it. I think is the only thing left.
The only way that will could make you make perfect decisions if you had the will and all necessary information.
Sure, and I think that was
anything less than that, then you're going to have failures. You're going to be a disappointment. You can even have feelings of guilt. You can even offend and hurt other people, and all of that's totally expected.
Uh-oh, you broke up a little bit.
I said all of that's told us in the Bible. It's totally expected.
I think that people aren't generally so stupid. When we say limited knowledge, it doesn't mean like they're so severely limited they can't tell between right and wrong anymore. Well, I mean, there comes
that was something I wanted to kind of add on earlier on this conversation, was that people will forget sometimes, especially if they are trying to delude themselves.
Yeah.
But I think God does a lot to try to not only remind us of His standard, what's right and wrong. He'll send people in our lives sometimes. I mean, there's all kinds of reminders, and it's like Kelly was saying earlier, there just gets to a point where some people want to believe a lie so desperately that they will ignore all information to the contrary, willfully ignore it, because they just choose. They want the sin. And so that's where, like she was saying earlier, God just gives up. And we're the same way. I think that's where, if I can help relay what you're talking about with your difficulty with forgiveness, is that you've tried to help reach your family, these people you're talking about. You've tried to reason with them. You've tried to say, hey, look, mom, whoever, this has hurt me, your entire life, since you were a child.
I stopped.
They put up barriers. They put up boundaries. They'll try to pretend like they're normal and loving and do other things certainly with other people. But with you, they're just flat. In my opinion, they're flat evil. They come off as the nicest people in the church, but then behind the scenes, they're flat evil. I'm sorry. Kelly, and they do everything they can to hide that evil. And so that's what Kelly's talking about. That's what makes it difficult.
No, I understand all that.
Really reconcile.
I understand all that. I know it's horrible. I know it's actual evil. I know that.
Yeah. Okay.
I totally agree with you.
That's the distinction.
Yeah. So I pray to God. I mean, however, as much as I'm able, and I know, thank God, he remembers that I'm dirt. But man, I so with all my heart, need to forgive in the capacity that God needs me to forgive, no matter what that is. I mean, it's because it's all God. I need God.
What if you already are? In fact, you've surpassed that.
Well, because I still feel angry every now and then.
It still breaks your heart. Yeah.
Yeah, every once in a while.
It breaks his heart too, I think. And so just as God reminds us of the sin,
because you did say necessary forgiveness.
I think
you didn't say luxurious forgiveness.
I want luxurious forgiveness, Richard.
I think just as much
what you
God
said.
reminds us what's right and wrong, right? He also reminds us what breaks his heart. So like the people you're talking about, they break his heart too. And so you're feeling God, his reminder not only of keeping ourselves right, but also what grieves him.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why you still grieve, Kelly.
Yeah.
God's still sharing with you, his love and his grief.
I'd like to tell you that it is truly a huge blessing for me personally. You may not look at it this way, to suffer in whatever way that other humans have and will suffer. Because in that suffering, what's that?
I said that's so wonderful. I want to get there too. I do. I mean, call me a big wuss. I'll gladly wear that. I will, because there's so much truth to it, but I'm so tired of pain. I am. And I don't.
Aren't you glad it's limited to 120 years?
Yes. Thank you, Father. Yes, I agree. I don't wallow in it. Certainly not. I love to be silly and make people laugh and brighten up other people's day. And, I just try to remember God's joy every single day. I remember every blessing and pray through the blessings, as far as I can, just looking around the house, but certainly my salvation and stuff. But every now and then, boy, can it hurt, huh? And I'm tired of that hurt.
Like this kitten?
Dude, what did she do?
She was all sweet and loving and being all cuddly, and then
bit the crap out of you.
My shirt. Now she's all evil and all crutched. Turns on a dime.
It's a cat. There's no reckoning a cat. Remember, right. Sammy Jenkins wrote, sometimes people do not have the ability to do something. This could be considered a disability. Richard, is this the way that you're using the word? Yes. I mean, compared to the major group of what is average, literally average. The reason minors are called minors is because they're literally younger than the average. That's what minor means. So you have the minor group, the major group, which are full-grown adults, because that's the longest amount of your life, normally, on average, is you'll be an adult for longer than you're old or that you're young. I'm using the word disability in that same way. Anything that is anomalous, anything that is not average in any way compared to the vast majority of the group, say better than 80%, is a disability, literally. And so it's an old-fashioned way of looking at the word disability. I understand that, but it's definitionally correct. Does that mean that that person has no abilities or is disabled in every way? Well, obviously not. Not usually. Usually if you're disabled in every way, you're just dead. I'm wanting to go and go ahead and wrap this up and have a cigarette. Kelly, I hope that I have addressed you with some amount of respect that you could tell. I really do want you to know that's my intent.
Yes, sir.
Even if you and I are not using necessarily the same exact definitions for the words that we're using. And I think sometimes we're talking past each other a little bit, but that's okay because, we haven't been married for 20 years and you don't know me that well. I don't know you well enough. I think with time and patience, that would improve.
Oh, I think you're lovely. Yeah. I mean, see, to me, I can have, this to me would be mildly warmed up, not even heated. It was very, very mildly warmed up discussion, which is perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all.
I'm Italian, so I'm right there with you.
Yes, sir. I think that you were perfectly respectable, and I appreciate that. And it's always lovely to see you. And Joel tells me you're going to talk. I'm like, yay! I hope you have fun.
Oh gosh, I would do dedicated shows to you guys anytime you liked. I think I've offered that before. It's still true.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Cool.
you. No, it's lovely to talk with you. Thank you. I'm so glad that you came on tonight and I got to say hello to you again and got to tackle with a rather difficult old,
Yes.
issue of mine. It's not a struggle on the day to day. It's just on those days where you remember,
I'm not asking you to reciprocate and repeat all the details of what you're talking about. I don't want to know unless in private some other time or whatever. Okay.
Okay. All right.
But I'm going to divulge something I've divulged several times before. I had red hair as a child. I dye it now, but
I'm not telling anybody.
No one can tell.
Labeling.
I had brilliant red hair. Like this beard color is pretty close to my actual hair color from my youth.
Lovely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know that you know the old expression, fairy saddle, but the freckles that go across the bridge of the nose, like a saddle for a tiny person.
Oh, my daughter has those. They're so cute.
Now they've become age spots, but they're still there. They're just big and weird looking, and they're not so cute anymore and pronounced. They've kind of faded and gotten ugly. But anyway, and I have a brother who's 13 months my senior, and we look almost just alike, except he has curly hair and I have pretty straight kind of wavy hair.
Oh, wow.
But he has curly hair. Okay, so we were often mistaken as twins. Now, in a small town in West Virginia with a Catholic mom and two boys who could pass for twins, who are, if I dare say, just cute as buttons. I've seen the pictures. What do you suppose they ended up doing at church?
Oh,
they were the
boys?
altar boys.
Oh, okay.
They were the altar boys for years. And mom being Catholic and us being cute kids, we were always the altar boys.
Oh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even through different pastors, and well, they call them priests, but they're not priests, but they call them priests. But anyway, okay. So the preacher there, who is deceased now, so I'll just say Don Heil, who was a Catholic priest at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Salem, West Virginia, where I was a child, where my brother was with me, spent a lot of time speaking with my next older brother for about like 6 or 8 months. I can't really recall. And my brother was always talking to me about these philosophical discussions they would have and how interesting the guy was. And then all of a sudden, he stopped going to the pastor's, what they call it, a rectory, and spending any time with the pastor, and he stopped talking about him completely. Now, I thought that was odd, but I didn't think too much about it. I was a little kid. I mean, I was like 10 when this happened.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then when I was 11 years old, he and I started talking, and we became friends, and we would watch movies together, have philosophical conversations. I'd have alcoholic beverages with them. We sat on the couch and talked for hours after church every Sunday. Then mom would come pick me up. He did this for more than a year, speaking to me like I'm a full-grown adult, which I thought was super cool. You'll want to guess why he was doing this?
Yeah, because he's grooming you.
He was grooming me because he intended to rape me someday.
Mm-hmm.
So this went on for about, 11 to 14 months. I can't really recall. I'm 12 years old. I'm in my 12th year now. He's still doing this, and he attempts what he had always intended. I'll leave out all the details for other people's comfort. Okay?
Yes.
Now, at 12 years old, I was in a very odd situation that predators will set up. Mm-hmm. My mom goes to his church. She's the accountant for the church. I know this. My mom does maid service once a week for this guy. He's part of our finances. Gotcha. I know this. My mom is a Catholic from an Italian family that is Catholic. He's a Catholic priest representing the Catholic Church and has all that authority. So what's a kid supposed to do? And I love the guy. Literally. I mean, I still love him. I've never not loved him. He's a fine, fine human being. He was brilliant. He was great at logic and philosophy. And I mean, we sat and tore apart movies together. Just tore everything apart. talked about life, tore that apart, tore social structures and school, and we tore apart everything. It was great. I learned a lot from him. Unfortunately, the man's a pedophile and an active one, or was. So you see, I was in a very odd situation where I loved my mom. I wasn't mad at myself in any way. And I loved this man. And those two things were intrinsically tied together out of my control. I still found a way to let him down gently and stop going to church and not offend my mom and not hurt her faith.
Or get her fired.
Or get her fired. I was 12.
Yeah, that's pretty good skills there.
Okay.
That was a difficult trap. Yes, sir.
I said to her, Mom, we have to talk alone. Went away from the rest of the kids. I said, Mom, Jesus is not made out of plaster and I can't go back to church. I said, it's all too fake for me.
Yeah.
She respected that. To him, I told him, you're like my dad, not my lover. I'm not turned on by you in any way. I'm sorry. If you thought I was going to be someday, I mean, I love you. I love you deeply. Like you're a much, much older brother or a dad or an uncle or something like that. But I can't be sexually aroused by you. That's just not doing anything for me.
I'm glad that, I mean, well, let me ask this question. So he respected what you said and stopped, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it did not turn to violence or anything like that. And I know sometimes those things do.
Yeah, threats.
He didn't try to further leverage me against, using my mom or anything like that.
See, if I'd known what I knew then, now what I know then, I'd be like, why do you want to be killed mafia style?
Yeah.
You know what I'm referring to?
In the Bible, yeah, causing children to sin.
Matthew 18:6.
Yeah. So, what is it? Millstone? Is that the thing?
That's
Millstone.
Yep.
If someone causes one of these little ones who trusted me to fall into sin, it'd be better for them to have a large millstone chained around their neck and throw it in the depths of the sea.
I can't think of a more difficult life than homosexual pedophile.
Well, Mr. Richard, my brother is calling me from Kentucky. Do you want to keep talking with Kelly?
I want to wrap it up because I want a cigarette. Kelly, thank you so much. Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody who should. Guys, kick yourself out. Just hit that red button with the white X on it. I don't kick people.
Give me 1 second.
But both
All right.
of you, thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you
you coming
again.
by.
Thank you.
We'll get you later. God bless.
All right, guys, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. This went, I don't know, 2.5 hours. I'm sorry, 1.5 hours longer than I intended. Remember, Sammy Jenkins, we should do more talks. I miss you. You're an amazing person. You're one of the more kind people I've run into in this little thing called the internet. And thank you for being exactly that. And thanks for all your dad work. I appreciate you. Till next time, guys. Peace, respect to you all. And I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends.